Hello, everyone. Welcome to another installment here in our video series. I'm going to be taking the time here. I'm joined by Frank Karsten. We're going to be going over our match we played at the Cross Continental Challenge. Is it Cross Continental Challenge? I can never remember exactly what it's called. Cross Continental Challenge. I'm looking at the thing from Pablo here.
Yeah, I think that's right.
But yeah, thanks for joining me here, Frank. Taking the time, and I'm going to go over what I thought was some pretty exciting games.
Yeah, my pleasure. We definitely had a tense match, and I think it will be fun and interesting to just revisit some of the decisions we made along the way, and yeah, see if we can learn or spot things that we could have done better.
Yeah, so I have up here kind of a mirroring of one of the streams on YouTube. I'll shout them out in a minute here, but we're just briefly going over the decks here. I had fun naming mine because of the Seven Dwarves, and there's an old YouTube video called Diggy Diggy Hole where the dwarves are digging a hole, and that's all it's about. So, but yeah, I had a Seven Dwarves mine, kind of Amber Steel deck, wanting to be more aggressive, trying to try out some of the more aggressively slanted cards that have come out in Azurite Sea and kind of break the mold of the traditional Steel Song, but you've stuck with more of the traditional shell with, some alterations in some ways, as they like to call it in this game.
Yeah, exactly. I'm definitely interested in your list as well, going without a whole new world and adding this sort of dwarf angle. Absolutely an interesting way to take the deck as well. I indeed stuck with a more traditional shell with Ariel and a whole new world. But well, when I saw the new Simba, The Lion King is basically my favorite Disney movie,
Nice.
and I felt it would synergize quite well with the new Lilo. For one, the small Simba can discard Lilo for value. The other reason is that Simba can ready Lilo to keep her safe from challenges. And well, besides that, just a decent shift line that can support a reasonable aggro plan as well. And yeah, I sprinkled in a bunch of one-offs to give me some options to balance out the curve and to try out various new cards. Like for example, the Gantu, the Pluto. Perhaps I should have played more Plutos because that card indeed is putting in quite a lot of work. But yeah, that's always the fun with a new set, trying out the new cards in practice and seeing how they perform.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely got to see some of the cards in action here. That synergy between Simba and Lilo doesn't quite come up in the match. It is, I would think, much more about a longer, grindy game that you see Lilo more useful for both of us. I think it is inked primarily for both of us throughout the games. It's going to be a card that you again will see the value of it come up in different matchups, particularly against Ruby decks. But you can also see how valuable it can be just as an inkable card when you don't need it or the matchup doesn't call for it. So nothing really to say when we look at this game telling of how the decks are going to play out against the entire field because we still do have, I believe we're playing 4 rounds in total. I just got my pairing against Moyen, so actually scheduled that for Monday. But yeah, we're going to see if that comes up in your next match too, which I think you're against Sailor, so you'll definitely be able to try to get some Lilos out there against the Ruby Sapphire Menace there. But for
Yeah,
sure.
exactly. Lilo should help quite a bit against Be Prepared in particular.
Yep. Yep. It
But
is.
in this matchup between the two of us, yeah, the Lilos are surely not meant for this particular matchup. I think in this matchup, because I go a little bit bigger with Robin Hood, I may hold like an advantage if the game goes long. But on the other hand, a whole new world certainly does not shine in this particular matchup because yeah, you threaten to um, just flood the board with so much lore the turn after a whole new world, and I would have trouble dealing with that. So well,
Yeah, there are two ways to look at that. I'd say in a traditional mirror match, in any game really, it's always been true that the one that's slightly slower and slightly bigger has an advantage because their cards kind of line up just pound for pound. They're a little bit bigger than the smaller one. However, in a similar functionality for this game, Amber Steel mirror matches also come down to who can generate more card advantage without using Whole New World, so they don't give their opponent the ability to kind of come back in the same way, since they do have very powerful and sweeping effects, which we do see a lot in the match. So let's dive right in here to the get go. Let's talk about what could happen, how it plays out, and more what happened here into the game. So I'm going to jump to the start of our mulligans here. I think.
Yep, mulligan's always interesting.
Did I miss part of there? Okay, here we are.
All right. So yeah, I started with.
See if I can get your hand.
I won the die roll, so I'm on the play.
Lucky.
And I started with an Ariel and like a bunch of like uninkable cards,
Trying to get the full hand there.
Songs, characters that I don't really.
I think that's after the
Well,
mulligan. Where's the actual mulligan? Sorry. All right. I couldn't see the full hand. I'll try to find a shot with it there. It looks like Lilo, It Calls Me, Zeus, Whole New World, Storm, and something else there.
Yeah. And I really want to be looking for something useful to play on turn 1 or turn 2. Lilo, I mean, technically is a 2-drop, but not really something I want to be playing in this matchup. So I ultimately just keep Ariel and toss the rest in search of something to play in the turn 1 and turn 2.
Yeah, I would say as a general rule for how I play Steel Song as well, I don't typically ever keep Whole New World unless I have the shift line kind of set up to go and I'm going first, and that's something that especially in the unknown is true. In this matchup, less so because it's again not a very powerful card or something you want to be doing too often. For me, my hand has it looks like Happy, Mine, Piglet, Pete, Lawrence, Storm, and Rapunzel. I believe I'm looking for something to do on turn 1. There's a lot of ways when you're going second to counteract opposing Cinderella starts, either by not playing anything on turn 1, searching for a powerful 2-drop like Calhoun would be, or just trying to play a Daisy that can get some traction going there, get around it. There's an interesting line that you can take in this matchup, particularly depending on what Frank would play on turn 2 if he leads on Cinderella, whether it be I go turn 2 Dwarven Mine into turn 3 Happy plus move it there to kill the Cinderella immediately before it can sing. Actually, that's a Dock in my hand, not a Happy. Just trying to take a look there. The quality is we're at 1080p, but it can only do so much,
The pictures of Doc and Happy are super similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you want to keep Pete.
Yeah.
Should be good. Yep.
Pete has the ability to counteract the Cinderella the same way, where you play Pete on turn 3 and then sing. You get the first way to sing in that sense there. So keeping Piglet mainly because I don't want to draw it late. It's very poor in this matchup. 2 health characters are going to have a lot of vulnerability.
Yeah.
And since it was a Dock, it was a Dock, not a
great on the draw.
Yeah.
Mm.
And your hand, Mulligan Institute's got kind of everything you're looking for. 2 1-drops, the shift line, the Rapunzel, the Storm, the Ariel. Very, very powerful start there.
Yeah, for sure. I might have mulliganed more with your opening hand.
Okay.
Like you have so many good 1s and 2s to draw into.
Sure.
I think Piglet is likely just going to be ink.
Specifically for ink is why I kept it, I should say.
Sure.
But you're not wrong there. Finding a 2-drop is pretty important. I just like to keep cards I don't want in the matchup, but I think Pete can help a bit in there, and got a little fortunate in drawing a 1 and a 2 in some ways. I'm pretty conservative with my mulligans overall. Keeping cards for ink, Rapunzel and Piglet could certainly be ink a lot of times, and Pete Storm is really the pull in my hand, I would say, but definitely respect the opinion there of that.
Yeah, maybe I'm mulligan a little bit more aggressively in general.
I have 16 uninkables, so it's a little higher on the uninkable count. I usually try to err on the side of caution a bit, but this kind of opening from your side is exactly what I didn't want to see, and it's kind of made me not want to even play anything on turn 1, even though I have the Cinderella drawn. maybe trying to even slow the game down as much as to play mine on 2 and then Pete on 3, and just make it so it's a little bit difficult for you to do something in the first couple turns with a Cindy Storm, potentially straining those.
Yeah, that was definitely a good play because if you had played Cindy here,
Mm-hmm.
I would immediately be able to storm it, and yeah, you would definitely fall behind very early.
Yep. Robin Hood setting up the shift line. So I do get pretty fortunate with the draw here in the second Cinderella. So I'm going to pause it really quick here. And one thing I want to kind of bring up when playing against this deck. So there's, like what Frank just said, how bad Cindy getting stormed is. Not only does it make me lose a card and him kind of keep it card parity, but it makes him, or is able to have him use his card efficiently, where it might get stranded and be something, he has to ink a higher priority card where he can draw into an inkable. But with the threat of the Robin Hood shift line into Homeworld potentially coming down, I don't feel like I can do nothing this turn, even though I'd prefer not to develop too much into the Cindy Storm, wait for the Pete Storm. It's just a little too risky from my side. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I like the way you approached it. This turn, like you do have to start doing something indeed. And this turn, just going double Cinderella, planning to next turn Pete, let the storm rage on, and then yeah, potentially set up some Rapunzel traps. Seems like the right way to go.
Yep. There's the Pluto. The one that's coming in.
Yep. Uh, yeah, so I'm not sure what I want to be inking here because I kind of like all the cards. I definitely want to play
Yeah.
Ariel this turn, but I would prefer to hold on to, well, Rapunzel, Robin Hood, and Pluto.
Yeah. And
Another Rapunzel.
yeah, the third Rapunzel actually comes in really clutch because in some ways, I think I made the comment in our game at a
Mhm.
later point in the, at a later turn. I think maybe even 2 to 3 turns from now because I remember that there were 2 inked Rapunzels. And I think to myself, are you more likely or less likely to actually have the third Rapunzel having inked too? And my thought is actually you're more likely to, because it's such a powerful card in this matchup that it's only played if you have one backed up. Still, there's not many cards that are higher priority in my opinion in the matchup. To where
Yeah, I think that's correct.
you would think there's 2 down, but not really still. So but this
And
is.
here I'm considering like what to ink, whether it should be like Pluto or Rapunzel,
Mhm.
because I want to play Ariel. I definitely want to keep one Rapunzel, likely also keep the Robin Hood. Um, and then yeah, you have to like start thinking a couple turns ahead. Like, will I be able to get like value out of a second Rapunzel really, or might I need a useful Pluto on turn 4?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
What
What
would you do here?
I think I would do the same thing. I think you end up inking the Rapunzel, and the thought being is that you don't know what the Ariel's going to hit, and there's the potential that you're going to find a whole new world. And the game does change texture quite a bit when your plan becomes to play a whole new world. You kind of almost
Mhm.
abandon the Rapunzel line because there's no point in drawing more cards before you get a whole new world, and you don't know what you're going to hit with Ariel or how the game's going to play out in the following turn. I think you
Yep.
can assume there's a chance that I have the ability to sing something, but right now my singing capabilities, while available, are not very appealing. Mainly because my Cinderella would immediately die on the crackback, uh, just
Yeah.
from anything. So I like everything that happened this turn for sure. Um, I I think end up passing on the ability to sing here, even though Killing Cinderella is relevant. My concern, even at this point now, is I think one of the only ways I'm losing without, with the double Pete happening these few turns is the Cinderella specifically. The big Cinderella, I should say, the one of. So I was
Yep.
trying to craft a game plan around being able to potentially beat that by just passing here again and having a 3/3 body to hopefully check the board. Because currently it can challenge down everything pretty well. But my turn a little bit
Yeah.
quicker. And there
Yeah,
she is.
that's a downside of being on the draw, because yeah, you can sing Let the Storm Rage On with Cinderella, but yeah, it's just tossing the
Mm-hmm.
character into the bin.
Yeah, I think traditionally in more um, familiar versions to some with Ursula, Vanessa, and sometimes even with Lantern. The play draw doesn't matter as much in this matchup, but when neither of those cards are present, mainly because they can be played into the Cinderella and kind of either move past that point of the game, or just ignore the fact that they're going to lose anything to it and kind of sing back. But with neither of those cards being prevalent, the play draw is a little bit more exacerbated just because the ways to interact early are so difficult. Into the Cindy Storm turns, Pete's the only real way to get through. And I feel like I have a little bit of advantage there on the Pete front because I have 4 and you have 1, but yeah.
Yeah. So I end up inking, well, the song here because,
Yeah.
well, Pete prevents me from using it. My plan is certainly to shift the big Cinderella next turn, if possible, because that was an amazing draw, and yeah, I know your deck has trouble dealing with it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like I recognize that there's a likelihood that you have Let the Storm Rage on in hand, and I put down the Pluto here, knowing that, Let the Storm Rage on plus a hit from Pete is um, a decent value for you, but that means that the Let the Storm Rage on will not hit the Cinderella, and I would be free to set up the big shift next turn. That's what I was thinking in the previous turn.
Yeah, the 4-5 turn here really is just the kind of backbreaking set of turns here, and I definitely took a minute here to consider routes around the Pluto, leaving it in play still, but all of them walked into a Rapunzel, and this is where I was really thinking that even though you inked 2 of them, there may be still one hanging out in hand, just because of how the game has kind of worked. Where I believe I was almost certain your hand of 3 cards included a Rapunzel and a Cinderella, even though I was hoping it didn't, just because of how the game has been played. It's not easy to put it on that, but it made a lot of sense in the worst case scenarios that I would live in potentially. I drew strength here. One way to get into this game would be to strength the Cinderella here, but I feel like it might just be putting myself too far back to anything you can play. Because if I strength here and then you have the shift Robin Hood or anything really, you can get tons of value just by getting in, and it's pretty inefficient for me to try and just kill a Cinderella here. While it's devastating if you have it, there is only one in the deck, and I can't try and completely play around all of it there. I'm trying to give myself the best chance to win in this position. I think it's just hoping you don't have it, even though I think it's not likely, but entirely possible. But yeah.
No, I agree. Then again, it might even be more likely that I have like a big Robin Hood next turn.
Yeah.
If you spend your entire turn on a strength taking out Cinderella,
Yeah.
then you are left with no board at all, while I have like a Robin Hood and an Ariel. You have potentially no more good value from Rapunzel. It would be difficult to get back from that point as well.
Yeah, and this is where the Cinderella just kind of takes the game. It comes down, and my only ability to deal with Cinderella would be to shift or to strength it with a ton of characters in play. Ends up, with the 1 point of damage it will get from the Pete challenge here. Ends up needing 6 characters in play, which I come pretty close to, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and here I just start whacking down the board. Indeed, strength is one of the few answers to Cinderella, so keeping you off of some characters is useful.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can just start questing.
Yep.
Did you consider putting some big Cinderellas in your list?
Yeah, I have a list currently of I would say 17 cards, which I think are potential inclusions in the deck. Uh, and they're all cards that either cost 1, 3, or functionally 5 in Cinderella. It is a super powerful card, and it's always really good to have the ability to make your 1-cost Cinderellas into threats late in the game, or even in the mid game, they have to then play around or consider. That's the main reason to even include it. It is an inkable card, so it's not really ever stranded in any kind of way in your hand. You have the decision to ink it. It's only poor really like after docks when you don't have anything going on and you don't have the ability to get to that much ink. But yeah, I considered it, and I'm still considering it potentially. I'm just trying all 4 ofs just to try out some of the new cards and see how they work out. But yes.
Yeah. Um, So at this point, what can you do? Uh,
I have
that
only 4 ink.
is is that a dog or a happy in your? It's
That's a
dog, right?
dock, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
So I actually even pass on inking here, um, even though I don't want to, knowing I'm going to play the dock out, because I think I'm just going to need every bit of firepower I have to get in the game. And that's really what I'm hoping to do. And hey, there's the whole new world, but the Pete is preventing that from this turn, which I don't even know if you'd really want to play whole new world here if you could.
Probably not.
Well, it's
Like,
pretty great, but
I'm
yeah,
I'm already nicely ahead. Um, no real need to spin the wheel.
nope,
Uh, yeah, and I can just start questing here. Going up to 9 with Cinderella. Maybe some more. Perhaps like a two-turn clock, whereas you were still stuck at 0. Um,
yeah, yeah. And I like the just full play of the Robin Hood. I think people get caught up a bit too much with shifting when they can to gain the one extra lore immediately. You're going to gain that same amount of lore back if you waited a turn and just quested, and you kind of lose a game piece by shifting there. So I like it. I like it. Um,
and I don't quest with any of the other two characters, because then you might be able to like draw 2 free cards with a potential Rapunzel,
yep,
besides taking out some of my characters for no big value on my part.
yep. So I start here by picking off the aerial, I believe. There's the option to try and kind of double in on the Robin Hood, singing both songs into it. But my main priority here is taking out the Cinderella, where I just want to keep some game pieces down for now. I don't need to do too much as far as trying to kill other things. I think the Robin Hood's not going to survive just through challenging if I can do make that happen. But it's really just keeping as much off the board, and if you do have songs to sing, then just kind of mitigating how powerful they can be. I have a
Did, did you
little.
consider singing it with Pete and then start questing with Rapunzel instead? Because
I
eventually
didn't.
you will need to start racing.
Yeah, I didn't really. I wanted to sing here with Pete. Um, so you're saying really quick here on that. So you're saying instead of. Oh, you're saying for questing with Rapunzel. I figured I needed more characters in play, if I could, to uh, deal with the Cinderella.
Yeah,
My plan here is to. Unfortunately, I couldn't sing for 5. I couldn't essentially. There was an option to on this turn sing with Rapunzel. Um, I think specifically if I had drawn. Let me just take a minute to think here on that. I'm trying to see if there is a way that the challenge from Pete plus 5 characters could have happened to make the Rapunzel or to make the Pete challenge into the Cinderella kill it. Um, but I guess that might not have. I think I would need a 1 cost there to make that work with the cards I had in hand. If I had essentially. No, I wouldn't have had much more. Maybe that would have been better. I'm trying to think of how this plays out. We just lost where we were. I can find it again pretty quickly. What happens when you pause things? All right.
yeah, or
Questing could have been fine. I think that both of them are going to be used to sing anyway, and I think there's the chance I challenge with the Pete if I can somehow pull off the ability to strength for enough. But this just ends up singing for 4, and I specifically don't put the damage on the Cinderella to diversify where some damage is to give me ability to um, still potentially kill Cinderella even if you have Rapunzel, because I can't finish it off here, but I have to deal some damage. And it's only 2 on the Cinderella, putting it to 3 versus the 4 on the Robin Hood. So both of them are going to give you full Rapunzel value. So I'm kind of in a rock and hard place with that decision here on those two. But
yeah, you still know from earlier in the game that it is likely that I am holding Rapunzel,
yeah,
but you're so far behind that you just cannot really afford to play around anything. You just have to hope that I don't know, it was something awkward like double whole new world or something.
yeah, I think I say that as well. I'm like, I think it's more likely, but I have to hope your hands double whole new world. And there's the
Yep.
happy to the board. So I do have the requisite number of characters to try and take that Cinderella if I do find another strength. But I think I keep my hand hidden for a second because I keep forgetting we're playing face up there, but you can't see. I flip it eventually. But yeah, this is kind of, you know, if you could have chosen something to happen that turn, it would have been 4 damage on one of your characters somehow, or I guess
Yeah.
three on the Rapunzel on the
How
Cinderella.
how how about on the previous turn? Yeah, do nothing at all. Just play a character and pause,
Me?
hoping that next turn you have enough characters in play for Strength of a Raging Fire to take down Cinderella in one go.
So it's not
Um,
this turn. So I
it's
start
this,
the turn here, or
yeah,
no, this is after the storm.
yeah, before the storm.
So let me just take a look here. So your turn, you
Yeah,
pass. All right, so let's see this turn then. So I have 4 ink, Doc, and Lilo. So what would I do with that
okay.
hand?
Um, play
The Lilo and
play
pass?
Lilo, play Doc, don't draw and just pass the turn. Then next turn hope to draw a character. Sing Strength for 4 damage on Cinderella. Um, add Let the Storm Rage on, challenge my Robin Hood. Hope that I'm holding 2 whole new worlds and claw back that way.
That could, certainly. I think, if I could, in a perfect world, have played the turn with knowledge of the top card of my deck, I may have just played Let the Story on for 3, inked the
All
Lilo,
right.
played the
Yeah.
Calhoun. Um, but I'm not certain on that one. Again, even that's obviously perfect information. That's also a line to potentially have to play for because of how uh, behind I am. Yeah, that could be. I mean, even in the world there, I could storm the aerial, ink the Lilo, and depending on if I draw anything relevant or not, play the dock, and not draw a hold with the strength, or however that would work out. It's potentially there. I think my best bet is to find a second copy of strength, but yeah, the Rapunzel certainly playing into the other Rapunzel was devastating from me. I just felt like I was under a little bit too much pressure because I'm on a 2 turn clock and I had to draw immediately, and I would get 2 draw steps out of the dock this way versus none the other way around. Yeah, I'm not certain if that would work, but it definitely plays around the Rapunzel for sure. And even if you do, I mean, even if that kind of world plays out and then you whole new world, there's a chance you just draw like 2 to 3 removal spells and I just die. But that might be a world I
Yeah.
can't really win in anyway. So
No, I think basically regardless of what you do, you are not going to beat the
right,
Rapunzel I still have in hand. Um,
yeah,
what just like if I were in your spot there, I would just be hoping that I am holding 2 blanks, like 2 whole new worlds or something, and um,
yeah,
yeah, uh, try to make the best of it. But yeah, I don't think you had a line where you could have won this particular game.
yeah. I think the 2 Rapunzels being inked probably meant I couldn't win anymore, solely because I believed the last card was a whole new world, and the last card in my hand was a Smee. In the whole new world, you Rapunzel into a bunch of giant things and the piglet, which is also another one of. Let's just point that out. That threatens the 5 lore I can't deal with. But yeah,
Yep.
this is. I mean, the board I was able to present was pretty strong um, on that turn. It just turns out that Cinderella is stronger, really. But yeah, I don't. I see what you're saying for sure. That made a lot of sense to try to play it that way. Um, Playing around the third Rapunzel, which could exist, but I think that also plays into a whole new world too, by not doing anything really that turn. Not to say I did much anyway, but to kind of just try and just hope it doesn't exist, I think is my best shot. But it wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
But no, definitely underlined. There's so many lines in this game, and I think that I mean, you play a lot of games, obviously. You played Magic for ever really that I know of. Because I watched you play in Worlds in Japan. Like I watched that coverage on repeat for many times, and I learned about Sheldon existing during that time too. He actually lived down the road from me forever too, which is kind of funny to say. Um, but yeah, like
Will be
this
missed.
game. Sorry. Yes. Yes. Yes.
He
Yes.
is missed.
Is missed but never forgotten. But this this game is very deceptively simple, but also there's so many decisions that go into every little thing of how the combat works, how some of the removals work, how songs work, how to value certain like every little aspect of it. It's why I enjoy the game because it's deceptively simple, but is can be very complicated if you make it, especially this matchup.
Well put and completely agreed.
Yeah,
Um,
and we drew kind of the perfect card, but the piglet's gonna throw everything else off here. So
yeah, it is basically too late at this point. I mean, you would love for the strength to kill my Cinderella now
yeah,
and clear my board, but then indeed, yeah, I have like lethal between Rapunzel and Piglet. So I think you're hoping that I just don't have a character next turn,
yep,
which, it could happen in a deck full of songs.
yeah. You're gonna have 5 cards in hand, and I'm just hoping that they're not none of them are characters from the Robin Hood dying too. I put some
Yeah.
damage on things to keep things in play, just and not give you activations from the Cinderella from the Daisy Duck. Even though it's a little inefficient, I could throw away a character. But yeah, yeah. I mean, you get the Robin Hood draw and you get a bunch of cards. I'm like, hope there's no character of any kind. So
Yep.
if your hand happened to be Hole in the World, Hole in the World, Hole in the World, Zeus, Zeus, I get another turn. Not gonna happen,
Yeah.
but certainly a world we could
That'll
live
play
in.
to your outs.
Yeah. Okay. So try and get both the hands. You picked it.
Okay,
All
so
right.
now you play first.
Yep. Now I'm going first.
Uh,
My hand is Dwarven Mine, uh, Daisy, Smee, Happy, Lilo, Calhoun, and Pete. Um, and yours is Cindy, Cindy, Robin Hood, Zeus, Lilo, Simba, Simba. Okay, that's what we got working with here. My hand is, I think, quite strong. I have a lot of cards I would like to use, and they're pretty aggressive. There's no card draw with it, but I can see keeping a good number of cards just based on how the games can play out. Go Daisy into Smee into either Pete or uh, if I play Calhoun on turn 2 instead, and then turn 3 Dwarf Mine plus Happy to set that up to be able to shoot something the following turn. So I do believe I full keep just to. I haven't actually watched the games back quite yet, but I'm again a big fan of keeping cards specifically to be inked or flexible cards to kind of change game plans in the early game. There's no Storm or Cindy, but I'm going first, so I have to worry about that a little bit less from your side. I have more options to kind of overcome that from your side.
so with this hand of yours, would you like you're certainly going to play Daisy on turn one and start questing and applying pressure? Um, would you then intend on turn two to play Calhoun and like keep questing with characters, or would you intend for turn two to play the mine and then turn three the happy and immediately start shooting damage? Because uh, I think the ladder line can actually be quite powerful, like
Mm-hmm.
immediately shooting 2 damage a turn starting from turn three. But it kind of doesn't mesh well with Daisy, which gives
Right.
me more resources. Um, I let's see. If I were to look at his hand, I kind of see like two different ways to go about it, and one is to go for the happy and the mine play a bit of sort of board control, and then I might even like mulligan the daisy, or yeah, go for like just put a bunch of characters into play and quest as quickly as possible. In which case, um, yeah, you could keep everything, but then you would likely end up inking the whole dwarf plan. and it might be worth um, mulliganing a little bit further in search of like a powerful 4 drop, like a Pluto in particular.
Yeah.
Um, like yeah, keeping everything can indeed give you some flexibility, but yeah, if I were to look at your opening hand, I would try to like formulate a rough game plan for the first few turns. Like indeed, what do you plan to play on turn 2 or 3? And yeah, I think if you keep Daisy, then I think you do want to be mulliganing, not necessarily aggressively, but toss out some of the 2 drops which you have an excess of in search of yeah, like a powerful 4 drop to curve out with a bit more power.
Yeah, you're definitely not wrong there. We clearly see how you have to make the decision for almost the entire game being played out as early as before the game
Mhm.
starts. Um, and the cards that we're talking about mulliganing or mulliganing into and how to play them out may vary based off of what we mulligan into. And the issue with that can be the cards that I'm looking to play, or especially even on turn one, are uninkable. So the flexibility of them is almost nil. It's just really hard to formulate a game plan and know for certain what to look for and how to go without some potential for it to not work out based off of what you may mulligan into for sure. I 100% agree with your kind of assessment there of how it can play out, and it may be even correct to Calhoun is a very strong card, but Smew Quest for more. Pete is a very strong card, but it also doesn't really do as much on the play as it may on the draw in some ways. It is still very powerful and can protect a lead. In the mine package, yeah, leading Daisy into mine can be contradictory. And yeah, it's I'm not certain. I couldn't give you a straight answer actually how you should play this early turn out. It's very much some of the new cards I'm even still learning with. I'm trying to figure out how your game plan is going to be enacted, even though we've played this kind of matchup for almost the entire game. It's really some of the new cards, and Daisy's a card which is really good on turn one sometimes, but also it's really good on turn 10 because it just quests for 2 and it still has 4 willpower and the cards come flowing there. But yeah, I can see that. I think I do end up full keeping with the ability to, or with the idea that I'm going to be more flexible with how turn 2 is going to look, whether it be Smee, Calhoun, or mine, and keeping the happy play lined up for turn 3 potentially. Um, and I do think I actually don't do any of that stuff, and maybe part of the issue with how my hand played out actually. But your hand looks like you're mulliganing the 2 giant,
Yeah.
lions there, the Lilo and a Zeus, of course. I think that Whole New World and Zeus are just not cards you ever keep going second, pretty much
Yeah,
ever.
I think it's double Simba,
Yeah.
Zeus, like a backup Cinderella,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, it's probably a Lilo.
Yep, it's Lilo.
I might have kept the Simba if I had like a small one to set up a shift line, but yeah, here I'm just digging for more relevant cards.
Yeah.
Uh, it can feel a bit awkward to keep both Cinderella and Robin Hood, because you can only play one of the two on turn one. But I mean, Robin Hood is also a perfectly fine turn two play, and I like
Mm-hmm.
locking that up and at least having the option in case I draw the big version.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's on my no mulligan list in this deck. I think the Robin Hood, Cindy, Ariel, and even the big Robin Hood just to help connect the dots there. But kind of what you mentioned actually ended up mulliganing the Lilo and drew into a powerful 4 drop,
Ah,
Rapunzel. So
yep, that makes sense. But yeah, what you also said about Calhoun and Pete, those cards are, at least in this matchup, cards that will excel when you are on the draw.
mm-hmm.
Because Calhoun is great at challenging, not as impressive at questing, and Pete is great to play kind of in response to a turn 3 Ariel. Whereas, yeah, if you play Pete by yourself on turn 3, it often doesn't really prevent me from like playing songs that I would be doing on turn 3.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I do believe I kept it primarily to be ink in some way. I might even ink it on turn one, just to. There's three more in my deck. I can draw them. It's gonna be fine at some point in the game, but I also want to make sure I can play whichever card I want on turn two and not be locked into one or the other. So I immediately get rid of the Smee, so kind of abandon that line, kind of thinking more that the Calhoun Pete interaction, even the Happy Mine, may be more relevant. Um,
Yeah.
you drew the best card in the deck. Not in this matchup, but
A whole new world,
Yeah.
yeah. Not really what I want to be drawing when I'm on the draw or in this matchup, but well, gotta roll with it.
Yep.
Um, yeah. So what do I have? So I have Cindy let the Storm Rage on, a good possibility.
Yeah.
Um,
A Robin
I'm
Hood,
not
Storm, Simba, Smee, Lilo, and Whole New World. Yeah, I mean, leading on the Cinderella makes a lot of sense. You still have a 2-drop in your hand, a Smee, and if you have drawn to a Shift Robin Hood, then you can make that work. And I give you a very nice aerial.
Yep.
Now, this is kind of where I make some decision on how this is going to play out. I'm a little worried. I think it's pretty easy. I can ink a mine here. I have 2 Dwarven mines. Um,
Mm,
and I'm a little worried about getting stuck with uninkables in hand if I decide to play out a mine, because my hand is Happy, Pete, Rapunzel, and Calhoun. And I really may need to play the Calhoun, or I may need to play the Happy and move it. If I play the Happy and move it, I'm inking the Pete, leaving me with Rapunzel, Calhoun. If I draw another inkable off the top, I guess I have a mine, but that would be in play. So I think I end up trying to eschew some of the mine play on turn 3, just because Calhoun can kind of check Cinderella from doing anything. It can't really sing in the face of a Calhoun too easily.
mm. Yeah, my inkling here would be to actually lead with the mine
Mm-hmm.
because next turn playing happy, putting it in the mine, shooting down Cinderella seems pretty good, and it would certainly take me a while before I can actually challenge that mine, whereas you effectively get like a bunch of extra damage for free.
Okay.
Um, because if you play the Calhoun, yeah, like uninkables is indeed a little bit of an issue with that card, but yeah, it's not good. Like it will prevent Cinderella from singing next turn, but there's nothing really that I could realistically sing next turn anyway.
Yeah.
So that's more of a thing for I don't know turn 4.
Yeah, it's certainly a divide, right? There's a path to take, and I'm considering the on the left there inking the mine, playing Calhoun, and then or inking the mine, playing the mine. I think I end up on the Calhoun just to keep flexible options there, and I can play the Happy in mine next turn, though it does leave it to potentially get stormed. Yeah, I'm not certain. That might have been wrong. I'm just trying to think of how the hand would essentially be Happy, Pete, Rapunzel, and Calhoun would be my hand,
Mm,
and the Smee definitely makes me less inclined to um, want to play out, or want to have essentially use my next turn just to move the dock. Although it would essentially work out that way because the Pete or the Smee couldn't do much here. So yeah, maybe the mine would have worked out better, and then maybe something I should have known to begin with. And there's another mine. I think that's the 4th mine. I think I've just inked mine so far.
yeah, if the mine would have been better, then you should have also mulliganed Calhoun.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And that's something that I probably should have considered more. Again, something happened with their thing. We're back. Okay.
Okay, I guess we're back.
Inked the mine. Yeah, so that probably comes back to the mulligan, right? I probably should have mulliganed the Calhoun if I just had the happy lined up, and that's definitely something I think the conflict would have been the Cindy or the Daisy here, with that. So this is the Daisy giving you cards, and the Mine trying to play a controlling game. They kind of conflict in game plans, and Daisy is a good card, but there is a drawback for sure. And we're definitely seeing how it can conflict with the overall game plan here. Here, I'm trying to see if I can make everything I want kind of happen, even if you have the Storm, because I can actually take out the Cinderella, and the Smee can't really do anything unless it wants to leave the Mine in play.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to just set this Rapunzel up as best I can.
Right. Yeah, so here I am definitely a little scared about the Mine and the Happy. Um,
You have Hood,
I
Storm, Simba, Ariel, World Strength.
Yeah, like I'm almost surely just going to play Ariel here this turn, which uh, means that if I just pass the turn without challenging the Mine, next turn you, I don't know, shoot down my Cinderella. I have 5 strength and won't be able to take down the Mine on the next turn
Yeah,
either. Um, so I feel like I'm under quite a bit of pressure and I have to start doing something, which means challenging the Mine with me, and in that case, should definitely shoot down the dwarf with Let the Storm Rage on, because then with Calhoun you can take down Smee or Cinderella, but then I would still be able to take down the Mine and prevent further value on subsequent turns.
yeah, yeah.
So I
Is
think what
there?
I'm thinking here, so maybe I can also strength the Calhoun.
Okay,
Um,
it's certainly interesting. That does. I think if you let's pause that on this. So there's a couple things that turn. So you still weren't sure what the songs were going to do, and that could depend on what you hit off the aerials. Why you led with the aerial versus storming first, even though you kind of
yeah, and
get a
there's basically no way I'm not playing Ariel this turn.
okay. Yeah, there's always typically I always want to make sure that I have as much information as I can, controlling the you know variables that give me the decision versus ones that don't give me the decision. Drawing a card, you don't really have a decision what it's going to be versus looking at aerial. Um, However, what you find off aerial could determine what you do with Cinderella. Is why it's important to note that there is a difference there in that sequencing, and also the ink part. I do like your ink choice actually, the aerial over the Robin Hood that's sitting there. Robin Hood giving you the potential to have just another body in play to help deal with the board. And
Um, yeah, exactly. I already have more than enough card advantage thanks to your Daisy and due to being on the draw.
mm-hmm.
So I need cards that can affect the board in an ink efficient way.
Yeah, yeah, you have the option here, as I mentioned, to um, storm the happy. Which if I'm using 2 of my ink to deal with a Cinderella, it's not too big of a deal. Oh, it's popping up here. Let's guys get past that. But this one's a very interesting one. This sequence here, this whole cascade of events, because this is kind of what determines the game in some ways. Not to say it was a mistake in any way, but it's how it played out was interesting enough. The kind of what resources were available, what you wanted to take out, and what you thought you could do as far as to help um, or try and push me back a bit, because I am, as you said, putting a lot of pressure on you from different angles at this stage here.
Yeah, I don't even remember what I play here, but
You kill the Calhoun.
even while the watching, I'm not even sure what the best line is.
Yeah, I feel the same way. So if I always say something and do the opposite, then I'm always kind of a little bit like, oh, what just happened? So
Yeah.
yeah, this here would have been pretty rough to not try and take out the mine. It does play a bit into how the next turn works out for me, but it is certainly tough.
Yeah, like I'm ultimately thinking, well, you can spend 2 ink to deal 2 damage to Cinderella, but then you may not have a useful rest of the turn. And yeah, in that case, I may just be able to claw back reasonably.
Yeah, and I actually drew a perfect card for me to want to second guess what I was thinking about doing before the turn, which was putting damage on Daisy and then healing Rapunzel.
Right.
But me drawing something that costs 2 and actually could survive a storm into the aerial turn, being if I were to leave that in place specifically, it kind of gave me some inflection point on what to do here. But I felt like the 3 cards was just too good to pass up ultimately. So I think that means that just the Smee is going to be ink here, and I was going to hope to use the Pete at a later turn.
You do fall behind on board if you go for the Rapunzel play.
Yep.
Um, it's definitely good card advantage though. Like the
Yeah.
alternative is, I guess, putting Happy into the mine, shooting down Cinderella. Happy challenges me, adds me, and
And I play as
some
Smee.
questing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
I think one of my best ways to get into the game would be to do that this specifically, because what this ends up having or doing, I think I end up taking out the Smee so that if you want to remove the mine, you can't sing with either of your characters. Even though I did only just deal 1 damage to the Smee just a minute ago with the Daisy Duck, that was mainly just to draw cards, not really for any other purpose.
yeah.
So you can call it overkill, but you know.
I think if you had gone for the like playing Smee and putting Happy in the mine play, you would very likely have been able to get some decent value off of Rapunzel next turn.
Okay.
'Cause it would be somewhat likely that, I would exert my aerial somehow, perhaps even for a challenge on the mine or whatever. And then Smee can run into aerial, and then with Rapunzel you draw 2 cards while being
Yeah.
more ahead on board.
Yeah, that was definitely a consideration with the Smee. I think I had some PTSD from Pluto, which I guess just showed up too. Looking at your hand, I was
Yep.
like, "Oh, this is going to happen again, isn't it?" Or I mean,
All
also
right.
Naveen
Yeah.
too. That could stop my whole plan from doing something like that. Or if you have, um, basically, I mean, mainly it's Pluto and Naveen, which would be scary. Also, you killing my um, Smee does mean that the Daisy Duck can still make the same kind of play and only draw 2 cards into Cinderella. But yeah, I think my main priority was actually just not giving up the Pete, because I knew that you were forced to challenge the mine this turn, so you couldn't sing, and I want you to not be able to sing again the following turn.
Mhm. I think if I made Pluto here with the line I suggested, you would then ping 1 damage to Pluto with the mine, challenge it with the other 2 characters, Daisy and Smee, and still be in an okay.
Would the mine be? I guess the Cinderella
Yeah.
would not be in play for that too. Sure, yeah, that could be how that played out. Yeah, um, yeah, I do agree with that as well. Oh boy, my cat is being a jerk behind
Um,
me. Sorry.
right, so I'm not sure what. In the meantime, I was. Oh yeah, I wanted to get rid of that mine while I can. Maybe I challenge locations a bit too eagerly, but it feels like free real estate to take out. Uh,
Sorry, my I know we're recording. My cat decided to attack a outlet a minute ago, so that was fun.
Hello, Kitty.
Yes. All right. All right.
The downside of this Pluto is that um, it's fairly easy to put, well, at least 1 point of damage on it,
Yeah.
and I don't have a lot of strengths on board right now, so you can just keep questing and just race towards 20.
Mm-hmm. I used this
Uh,
turn, I believe, as a setup turn, uh, developing the Pete and the Smee to kind of prevent a lot of what's going on, and then I can use the strength and the Pete and Smee to take out most of the board. I would again fall prey to a big Cinderella, the line of Pluto into Cinderella again. And I'm debating if I want to keep the Lawrence or the Mine. But if my plan is to just get rid of the Pluto with the strength in and of itself, I think I keep the Lawrence as the fifth character. And I just want to have it be a consistent lore thread against something potentially big.
Yeah.
So I end up just passing here. I'm surrendering a little bit of tempo back to you, but I'm hoping that it kind of works out.
Couldn't you just sing strength on Pluto and then challenge Pluto with Daisy?
I could. I would then potentially lose the Daisy here.
True.
And I
Yeah, and you can actually just strength Pluto or whatever on the next turn.
yeah.
Additional character.
Yep. And I keep the strength in case something scary comes down, potentially. Which does. Although
So I
the Mine being inked does mean me a little more vulnerable to the Pluto, so maybe it was correct to not do that, since the 1 point of damage could be gotten not just from the extra character of Lawrence, but from the Mine itself. So that maybe have been a misstep, and the lore is comparable to the amount that the Mine would give me from Lawrence. So that may have been a judgment call I mistook as well, for sure. It's hard to know in the moment versus always in retrospect because you see the hand and yeah, it makes sense in some ways. But I felt pretty good about getting the turn back here.
Yeah, maybe I should have just quested actually, because I mean maybe you can take out Pluto and then challenge my characters. I don't know, Pete into Ariel, Smee into Cinderella.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that would go pretty poorly pretty
that
quick.
that would probably go pretty poorly.
Yeah, I don't hate your line there at all. I like keeping. I mean, I could even have seen the Pluto actually questing by itself, because I feel like
Yeah,
it's going to be trading for. It trades for something pretty much always, right? That's what it does. If you had a Rapunzel, or if you're playing to drawing a Rapunzel, that might be a reason to leave it readied, which is always one of the better cards to draw, of course. Um, but yeah, I think at this point I'm kind of just throwing everything out there, and I should have led with questing with Daisy, of course, but before playing anything else, just as a general rule. But thinking about so many other things, it's not always
yeah,
it's pretty negligible here because I'm never not going to play those two cards. And I'm a little scared of the Simba, even though the Pluto can eat some things. The Simba protecting the characters with Pluto in play, bodyguarding everything is a little bit worrisome. But I do get a
yeah.
pretty
Maybe
big
it's
lure
a
gain here.
stronger card.
Yeah,
Worth noting, by the way, that if Simba readies all my other characters, Pluto would not be a bodyguard anymore.
true, true.
Though the readying with Simba is optional, so I can choose to leave Pluto exerted if I and everything else exerted if I prefer.
Yeah, I wish I knew
Um,
where the little Pixelborn Connect symbol was, so I didn't have my discard right on top of it. I didn't realize it was there. Sorry.
um, I don't even remember if I saw it that way. Maybe the spectator view is different.
True, true. I actually don't think I saw it, and more so for everyone else involved. But yeah, this is much more of a numbers game at this point, right? You have the ability actually to use Pluto really well with the song you drew, which I've actually been really impressed by that song. More in theory than anything else, and more playing through some games after this match with it. After you played it against me, it wasn't something I was had on my radar too much, but mainly because of how it doesn't play very well into Diablo, even though it seems like it'd be good into Green Steel. It's a card for Ursula to take, but it's a song that's vulnerable to Ursula, but not an answer to Diablo, and also it makes you draw a card, which is not always great into Diablo. So it's an interesting one in these kind of matchups. But
Yeah, it's like I just want to have a couple of inkable songs in the
yeah,
deck
yeah,
for Ariel. It used to be like Bare Necessities or
I think you hate that
World
card.
Lines. And this new one, I figured if you have a bodyguard like Pluto or maybe a Simba as your only exerted character, giving resist to such a character could be pretty useful. So I want to try it out, and it's been okay so far. Indeed, useful synergy with Pluto.
Yeah, yeah, that's the one that I think you mentioned you wanted more copies of after playing a few games with it.
Yeah,
Okay.
so here obviously I have to start challenging,
Hmm.
because you have a lot of lore on the board,
Still have
and
9.
last year
Yeah.
you added like even way more. That's definitely an advantage of Daisy and Lawrence. Just lots of pips.
Yeah. I mean, I mentioned that in the Mulligan too. So this Daisy that's exerted right now is the one that was in place since turn 1. And the one I just played is on turn 6 or something, and it's good at both points, right? It's good on turn 1 most of the time, and it's also really good on turn 6, 7. It's just a hard to deal with card.
Yeah,
Long Game Zeus is in these Steel Song decks, the more traditional ones, in any numbers of between 2 and 4. I'd say is traditional what I've seen between them, and the strengths are sometimes hard to make work when you're fighting character for character. Trying to control the other's board. So it is a clean answer to it, but it is also uninkable. So finding room for all the cards to answer Daisy makes Daisy even better. And I think we saw that in some of the blue steel matches too that I watched yesterday, where uh, it was the Sapphire Amber aggro deck versus blue steel, and blue steel just had no way to deal with all the 4 willpower stuff going on. But yeah, you
yeah,
make pretty good use of the song. I was actually kind of thrilled when you had to play that song for full ink value. Um,
yeah. I considered singing it with Ariel,
mhm.
but I already had small Cinderella and the Simba bodyguard
Yeah.
in hand that I knew I might be able to play after. And the Simba bodyguard can turn into a big Simba on the next turn to set up like useful challenges, so it does represent a lot of damage.
Yeah, yeah,
And yeah, I felt like I just needed to use all the power I had on my characters to start challenging, even putting 2 damage on Daisy so that a hit from Ariel next turn can take it out.
yeah. There are a lot of situations where you want to play around cards like Rapunzel and not do something like that. But this is the point of the game where you don't have the ability to afford that kind of
Yeah,
thing. And I of course draw. I think at that point the best card I could draw, which is Doc.
yeah, Doc
Really,
was really good.
yeah. It wasn't necessary on the board. I could think I would still survive if I draw a random character or maybe win. But it was definitely something that fully iced the game really. And Daisy's doing great work there, putting a strength in the storm to the bottom. Kind of what you were looking for in a lot of ways.
Yep.
Um, and yeah, I just added tons of willpower characters and lore to the board where I'm playing off the top, playing what I draw, and can't can't go too wrong. And I think at this point you're just have a handful of uninkables that don't interact with the board and have to just pray the whole new world does something. Even though I think it's pretty hard to clear the board, especially since we don't play grab your swords in your deck. But yeah, I liked all
Yeah.
the challenges.
Yeah,
I think
I think even
maybe
if the Doc would have been something else, I probably would not have been able to uh yeah, to come back in this game. It's just too much lore and yeah.
I do want to say briefly here on the turn prior with the um, song here. So you didn't have the Pete beforehand, right?
True.
So there is the option, like you said, to set up the Cinderella and the Simba, and you can shift next turn. I'm trying to make sure I understand that one fully, just because otherwise the alternative would be singing it, any inkable that you play, or you don't even need inkable, you can play Cinderella and just the Mufasa itself. That doesn't really open up many more options for you than just having the Simba in play would. Just for those kind of watching this, it's not as though the 2 points that the aerial did is functionally the same as the shift line could have done or the card in play could have done. So it is good to note of when to use the aerial as it's 2-3 body as 2-3 body. It's not nothing. So it was really good. I really liked that, especially watching it in retrospect from the hand, because on the surface it looked a little bit strange to me, um, as far as like challenging with that, having just sung something and be able to use the hand more efficiently with how many cards you had. But with the hand as it wasn't really adding much to the board, with the extra 3 ink that you could have used. So yeah, I liked
Yeah,
it.
an Ariel over 2 turns takes out a Daisy. That's all I don't know, thinking and hoping for. And yeah, I set up some desperation whole new worlds, but
Yeah,
yeah, without grab your sword in my deck. Um, yeah, I think I even said, well, maybe I forgot about the card in my deck. I'll just whole new world again, but nope, did not get there.
No, you just forgot how to use the Simba. It's the draw first. It's much better.
Yes,
Nah,
yes.
it's fine. But yeah,
All right.
there's none of answers to be found here. You're actually able to pick off a couple things, I think, with challenges, but not really clear any of the rated characters, which you need to
No,
clear. The
it's over at
Daisy,
that point.
yeah. I'm gonna go to the next game here, just to
Yep.
start us off. So I do recall I do full keep this hand, I believe.
Oh, okay.
I knew I full kept one of them, which people always get very scared when they hear. But I'm trying to make sure I get a better view of your hand here. Your hand, I think, is Rapunzel, Zeus Strength, and one card under your finger. I can't tell that you threw back. It looks like. Um, so yeah, talk through the decision here. I think I was able to, based off the first two turns, pinpoint two of the three cards kept. I thought you kept four for a second, but yeah. What are you thinking here with this keep?
So I didn't have a one drop. I definitely wanted to keep Smee and Ariel to have something to play on turn 2 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are generally going to be the best possible plays in my deck on those turns. The question is whether I want to keep Rapunzel or not. On the one hand, card could also be used as ink in like a safety situation where I draw too many uninkables. On the other hand, I also like I wanted to dig for a one drop because like I'm already behind on the draw. You have a fairly aggressive deck, and starting to affect the board from turn one onwards is quite appealing. So I wasn't quite sure whether I should keep the Rapunzel or not, but the Smee and the Ariel is in there for sure, and likely if you see me mulligan a bunch of cards and then ultimately not find a one drop, you can like definitely put me on a good 2 and 3 drop, which is most likely Smee and Ariel.
Yeah, yeah. I
Would
mean,
would you
you're
have kept Rapunzel here?
could you what?
Would you have kept Rapunzel here?
I believe so. Yeah, I would say that in general, again, I played a ton with this deck in the previous formats. I had, strict. I basically had a strict guide of the specific version I was playing, where I had a lantern in that version, where my strict keep were small Robin Hood, big Robin Hood, Ariel,
Mhm.
Lantern, and Cinderella. Those are the cards I kept, and then everything else is contextual. Smee was also in a category of I usually kept, but it wasn't a strict keep in some ways, where I would kind of gauge the rest of the hand, and it'd probably still be a keep most of the time, just as a flexible card. And you're going first in this game. You also your deck has 12 one drops to hit. You have the Cindy's, the Robin Hoods, and the Simbas. So yeah, I don't think that you needed to throw away more cards to dig. I don't think that anything was done incorrectly with this mulligan. I think the last card actually under your finger there is a Gontu, if I had to guess. It looks a little bit different here, and I don't think it's a big Robin Hood. But yeah, no, I like this. I mean, even again missing, you're still fine. It's not ideal, but it's totally fine. Rapunzel is, I think I mentioned at the start of this video, probably the best card in the mirror match. Whoever can leverage a Rapunzel very well, even as something as silly as Storm Rage on your own character to then draw cards, sometimes has a big advantage. We see that more in the traditional Steel Song mirror matches where both players are on a whole new world trying not to use that if they can, unless they have to, or have set up a good game state to use it. But Rapunzel's a fine keep. Yeah, I mean, I like it for, your hand might dictate the fact that you have to play a whole new world on turn 4 with Ariel. That just may be how it plays out, and Rapunzel's great ink then. Or if you can find a way to use it, it's also interesting. But yeah,
Mm.
my hand
Would- Yeah.
is something I wanted your opinion on too. I do full keep the hand. It is Cindy, Daisy, Happy, Lilo, Pluto, Storm Strength. My thought was I'm going second. There's a chance you don't have a Cinderella, in which case my Cinderella is pretty good. Um, in a world where you do have a Cinderella, I can play 2 one drops on turn 2, not playing at turn 1, or just play Daisy on turn 1, because probably would do that. I'm pretty much keeping the Lilo for ink, and the Pluto is flexible to be ink or a turn 4 play, which is really good. The Strength can help in the world where you don't have a Cinderella, and I can use the Strength plus the 3 1 drops to take on Ariel in turn 3. is another card to potentially keep. But that's my logic for keeping the full hand. That the Strength has versatility, the Storm Cindy has some versatility. Lilo's probably ink. Pluto's probably going to be ink. Happy could be ink depending on how the game plays out in the first few turns. Um, but yeah, this was basically, I took a while on this mulligan. These are the kind of hands where, again, I'm used to playing the bigger Steel Song version, which has a much more general rule set, I would say, for how it's supposed to mulligan. And the game plans don't shift as much of what role I'm supposed to take on turn 1 or 2, where this deck does, I feel like. There's a lot more room for error in that sense, which you can clearly have seen in the games that we discussed prior about what should I have done on turn 2, played the mine, the Calhoun. Should I have mulliganed the Calhoun if I was playing the mine? I ultimately think you're probably right. I probably should have mulliganed the Calhoun and kept the mine and played the mine out on turn 2. It might have had a much different effect on the game from an early get-go. And even if my plan is to play the mine, well, the Calhoun should have kept the Daisy. The Daisy did end up, questing for a lot, but also gave you quite a few cards too. So it's very contextual. But this hand, where are you at? What would you think? And I do get to know that you've mulliganed 4 cards. I think I thought that you kept 4 cards, but either which way.
Um, I would probably mulligan the Daisy
Okay.
because I think that character is way better on the play than on the draw.
Mm-hmm.
On the draw, like you cannot be like guaranteed aggressive, and also giving me potentially free cards is a bit more dangerous. You could just see Daisy as just a 1/4 character that can challenge back, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, keeping it as an uninkable then is a bit feels a bit medium, especially when you have potentially Cinderella on turn 1. I I would keep Cinderella along with Let the Storm Rage On, and likely also the strength. I do like the removal spells more when you are on the draw and need to get back some tempo, and yeah, have potentially like a Cinderella to sing it with, along with a Pluto to protect Cinderella on turn 4. I also don't really like the Lilo on the draw,
Okay.
because yeah, it's also like more of a single-mindedly aggressive
Oh,
character.
it's ink here. It's for sure ink. It's being kept for ink. That's why it's in the hand.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the happy is I can somehow see the idea of like going one drop into one drop, and then strength on Ariel.
Yeah, it's.
On
I
the
think.
other hand, I'd rather try and hope to go turn 1 Cinderella, turn 2 character, turn 3 character, and then sing strength on Ariel.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I would probably mulligan Daisy, Lilo, and Happy in search of characters like Calhoun, or maybe Lawrence that will be better at contesting my board.
Okay. I guess the last card in your hand was a Pete, not a Gontu. But yeah, I don't think I would have kept the Pete either. I just got a better look at it just now. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I certainly can see where you're coming from. I would probably say I'm viewing the Daisy, yeah, as a character that's not going to quest in this hand. It's going to be something to maybe a Rapunzel at some point. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, I think it's good to just have something in play to help power up the strength. That's why I think I kept it ultimately. And yeah, just the
Yeah,
1 points here and there is reasonable, but for sure.
we definitely have some different I guess risk tolerances for mulligans,
Yeah,
because I think I um am more happy to toss away some cards in search of like a better curve out, whereas you prefer to just guarantee things as ink.
yeah.
Yeah,
You
different perspectives.
yeah, you start with inking Lilo and passing, which I'm pretty thrilled about. I drew into I think it's another Lilo, which I've inked already on turn 1. Inked 1 Lilo, have 1 Lilo still in hand. You drew your 1 drop, but a turn late.
Yeah. Also, I drew a lot of uninkables, so
Yeah,
this could get a little awkward,
yeah,
right? If I don't draw an inkable next turn, I'll have to ink my Rapunzel for Ariel, and then don't have any ink left.
Yeah.
So I'm not very happy with my hand at this point.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't be either. And I want to make sure I note as well. People often play the Simba. It's very like if you're newer to the game and you don't have as much experience with TCGs on how your cards are working. Where sure you could keep the Simba to draw and discard the Zeus for an inkable, but that's basically the same thing as having inked the Simba to begin with because the 1/2 body is not going to matter. So I like the ink decision there, and not again that whole every time I pause it comes back.
Yes.
But yes, the yep, I like here, and I think you're not unfavored to draw into a uninkable here. I think the odds are slightly in your favor, but yeah, for sure. So here's a key turn I think for me for the game. I drew a Calhoun, which is one of the better 2 drops here. But my theory of your hand, I'm trying to deduce your opening hand. I think it involves me and Ariel, and I would put Robin Hood in a similar category to Rapunzel as far as what you would have kept. And I can certainly see the Simba that you inked this turn not being something you would have played on turn one, even if you had it in your opening hand, depending on the situation. Uh, just because it's not the ideal card to play on turn one, really. It's really just to set up shift lines if you have it, but it's hard to keep uninkable shift lines too often, so it's less likely. But yeah, my sequence here is gonna really, I think, dictate most of the game from this turn onward, and it's sometimes scary to say how quickly the game can turn. I could do a lot of things here, right? I can play, I can ink Lilo, play Happy and Daisy, and just sing Strength on the Smee, um, and that might have been a better line ultimately. Um, and one of the biggest things I'm doing by giving up the Happy in my hand is going down an inkable card. Really is a big cost here by playing out 1 drops. 1 drops are great, but also you can't play too many of them, or you'll just be short, unable to play things out. But yeah, this turns a big decision point of do I play Calhoun pass? Do I play Smee Daisy strength the Smee? Or do I play Smee Daisy and pass? Hopes to stop an area from happening. And what's my turns look like? What do my turns look like from there? Um,
Yeah, I would generally speaking be more scared of Ariel, which you can indeed expect on the next turn, than about Smee.
mm-hmm.
So my first thought is, well, save the strength for Ariel on the next turn, and then this turn just play Calhoun. Next turn, some other character,
And then
and
sing the strength.
sing the strength then.
Yeah.
I think if you play the 2 characters here, indeed, like that means that you don't have the happiest ink anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Then I would be more inclined to, yeah, strength the Smee here
Okay.
and like go for like big board presence. Just leave the Ariel be.
Yeah. That
Um,
could have been a part of it too. That would have made more sense. My thought here, in some ways, to the other option of playing the Calhoun and next turn playing a character and killing the Ariel is that I don't have a really great way to beat the Smee then either, except for the Storm, which I then have to play from hand as well. Um, that's my main concern from that perspective here. Does the Ariel miss too? You drew a whole new world of mist. Yeah, your hand is not looking very good, but uh,
Yeah, this turn was terrible.
quite
I
Rapunzel.
did not feel confident at this point in the game that I would still claw it out because yikes, yeah, a whole new world is certainly not a card I wanted to draw. Missing with Ariel, um, I'm uh, I'm in a rough spot here.
Yeah, and I think ultimately what did me more harm than good was my Daisy from this perspective. I think I might have misanalyzed how I should have played this game out based off how poor your hand was. Um, I don't
I mean,
obviously know
you
how your hand is, but
yeah, you cannot know.
Robin Hood, just any hit is good for you, really.
Yeah,
So it's yeah,
like for all you know, my hand is gonna be perfect. I don't know. Next turn, big character. Turn after, big character. Sing some songs. Ideal mix. If you just sit back and do nothing, then you would eventually get overwhelmed by yeah by the cards that I might have. So
yeah,
yeah, good question with Daisy did you more harm than good, but yeah, you don't know my hand.
yeah. So it's always I've had people reach out about the game because this game in particular has caused a lot of questions to be kind of raised. Not questioning our plays, but like how did this like what this game did just kind of show what you can do in this game and how the decisions can like how you can play against an opponent. I had a lot of people reach out and ask about all the different things that can happen, and all the different lines to take and how complicated the game really is. People haven't played the game before, and this game is a good showcase of how complicated the game can be, from both of our perspectives, really. And from my side, briefly, I saw you ink a Rapunzel. I can't really quest with the happy here because if you have a Rapunzel, which I think it's more often than not, much like game one, where there's a Rapunzel ink, that means there's probably a second one there more often than not. If I quest with the happy, then you can just heal for 2, draw 2, which is devastating. But the Daisy means that there's some opportunity cost from your side because you're only drawing 1 card and potentially setting me up for a Rapunzel too. So this game is played heavily with the idea that there's possibly a Rapunzel in your hand still from that 3rd ink. And of course, you're always worried about it from your side too, because I have limited options for card draw and you can't overwhelm me otherwise.
Yeah. So here, like I think for quite a while about what to actually target with Let the Storm Rage on.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't sure whether like Cinderella or Happy was correct here.
Okay.
And I was strongly considering the Happy because then I can at least start doing something with Smee.
Right.
Because now, yeah, that's me once he quests or challenges or whatever, he's just gonna get taken out by that Happy. But yeah, I do go for the Cinderella, and that works out well because you still had the Let the Storm Rage on in hand.
Yeah, I think that's also a big point too. I think that is a complicated decision based off of what you're saying of how you want to act, like how your hand wants you to act in some ways. But I think if you take out the happy, the game might have actually been lost at that point, honestly, because the Cinderella, that storm clunks up a bit on my hand and actually forces me to ink awkwardly the next turn.
Yeah.
But for sure, this is a big kind of sequence here.
Oh, and then I have another decision here because I drew
Yeah,
Cinderella, and now I can ink this turn. So my first thought was, well, just ink Robin Hood's play Cinderella, uh, which could be good. But then I was like, well, maybe like I'm just behind. Maybe I need both of those Robin Hoods to
hmm,
start contesting the board. Also, if I just ink Robin Hood and play Cinderella and next turn draw another uninkable, which is
yeah,
possible, yeah, I may not even be able to play that Robin Hood. So ultimately, I ink Cinderella here and kind of play it safe. But in hindsight, I regret that decision. I think inking Robin Hood and playing Cinderella was correct here because I mean, just being able to sing "Let the Storm Rage On" next turn is nice, and Daisy is likely going to quest, likely getting me closer to an inkable. But it was close. Also, I was also thinking if I play Cinderella and you have the mine and just
yeah,
shoot down the Cinderella, then I can also be in bigger problems, which
yeah,
seemed like a viable possibility given like how you had like played your hand that you had the mine. There was also a
sure.
consideration not to play the Cinderella there.
Yeah,
But yeah, another close call.
that decision there, I'm gonna pause on that one there because that's a lot of stuff that you just mentioned there. So there's a lot. There's
Yeah,
consideration for the mine. There's consideration for your ink count. There's some consideration against the daisy activation, which ultimately does dig you closer to an inkable card on average, um, if quested with. And I do think, yeah, even not in hindsight, I think it might be right to play the Cinderella just because of how the turn went, and also if I do have an ability to remove the Cinderella, is most of my turn being used. Whereas if I don't remove Cinderella, you can at the very least sing with the Let the Storm Rage on, with it to draw another card to an inkable. But yeah, I definitely also can respect the playing it safe in some way and not doing that just to make sure that you can ink. That is something that, again, kind of mentioning with the Simba, the one drop Simba being played to loot away an uninkable card, you kind of taking unnecessary risks in doing so when you can just play the card as ink. It is very complicated, and yeah, it's a judgment call. I think, especially without the Cindy being able to sing a storm, the only concern being a mine, which is a little bit problematic, but definitely manageable with the Robin Hood that you can have. I can see where that can be an issue, where if you play the Cinderella, then immediately draw an uninkable and the Daisy, misses, it reveals that big Simba. I guess you could then play that by inking the Robin Hood. But yeah, there's a chance you run uninkables in a row, but not too big a one. But yeah, I like your thought process there on that.
Yeah, I just wish I had played Cinderella in hindsight.
Yeah,
Um,
inking the Pete and playing the Simba. I forget which one actually comes down here.
yeah, I think I want to lead with the Simba here because,
Interesting.
well, I need to start challenging, like preventing you from just racking up lore point after lore point. And
Okay.
I'm thinking how potentially next turn, um, like something like Smee and Let the Storm Rage on could take out Pluto, and then Simba go on Daisy, or even more likely Zeus on Pluto, and then Simba takes out Daisy,
Yeah.
Smee goes onto the Happy, Simba then readies Smee so that it doesn't take damage, and I would be in a decent shape. Whereas if I play Robin Hood this turn, then on the next turn, like if I Zeus Pluto and then want to start challenging, I'm not
Smee's gonna.
able to like take out Daisy conveniently. So I needed that fourth strength in my characters. Plus Simba plus Smee means that Smee doesn't take damage at end of turn, which matters.
Yeah, my only concern would be if I only have two cards in hand. Prior going to this turn, I'll have three. The um, the potential to get strength out of the game is the one concern with the Simba over Robin Hood. I have played one, so only three left, and maybe that's just a risk to take. But that's just
Right.
another part of the game where we have to make judgment calls at certain times, and you get to choose a path and see if hope it works out. Obviously, the Pete does a really good job here as my draw step, um, and it seemed better to me than playing Calhoun and storming nothing really. Again, I still think that there's a potential that you have a Rapunzel in your hand from the turn 3 to 4 play, where you inked one on turn 3, and then I made a play to not let your Smee get as much, uh, draw potentially after Rapunzel. I think there's a chance you still have one from this board state,
Nope.
which I
Um,
which I like the
I
Pete being played out first for.
I absolutely like, agree with playing Pete there. If you hadn't, you would have basically lost your like your entire board and your lower pressure. Um, and this keeps up the pressure.
Yep, Pete doing a great job just doing things. These turns, I think, get a little systematic. I of course know that this Smee is gonna hit the Pluto first, and then the Simba's gonna come down afterwards. Cinderella being played here, and then one of their 5 drops makes a lot of sense. Just you can't play any action, so it's pretty great to have be able to use full ink value.
Yeah, I think I made another mistake here
Okay.
by I think I ended up playing Robin Hood, but it should have been Simba as well.
Mm.
Um, like I
Yeah, you do play
um,
the Robin Hood, I believe. So
yeah, I had not like fully thought through all the permutations.
okay.
Like I played Robin Hood thinking I would be able to challenge something next turn and start gaining some lore, but actually, um, like I had the feeling I had to start challenging something here because like if it's yeah, it's actually an interesting point to pause at. Like my first thought this turn was, well, I should just like pass the turn. Next turn, put damage on Pluto and start challenging down your entire
Mm,
board.
okay.
Um, but then I thought, okay, if I do that, then next turn you gain 5 lore up to 14, play some more characters. I won't be able to take down your full entire board next turn, most likely. So then you go up to, I don't know, like 17 lore the turn after,
Sure.
while I'm still effectively at 0. And yeah, it seemed a little bit too unlikely that I could come back from that position. So, like counting those turns ahead, I was like, well, I basically just have to start challenging here to prevent you from reaching those high lore totals and ensure Pete can challenge Simba
Yeah.
conveniently, but at least that means that neither that Pluto nor that Pete are going to add to your lore total on the next
Right.
turn, which is the thing I'm most worried about, especially given that I have like way more cards in hand, likely are gonna get more cards with that Daisy. Um,
Yeah.
but given and for this line and that you're going to challenge the Simba with Pete, I would have been happier if I had Simba rather than Robin Hood in play here, because I want to be challenging Daisy on the next turn.
Yeah. I mean, on face value, the board state is such that the Pete's going to hit the Simba, and then to kill the Daisy, you have to send both characters into it, or you can sing. But if there's a Pete, you have to hit with both. And just having the one in play, and then be able to use Cinderella, and even make sure the Cinderella is protected to sing again with the second
Mhm.
Simba, maybe readying it after challenging the Daisy if it was in play instead. I can certainly see that. Yeah. Um, Yeah, so I get this turn back. I drew a Daisy, which is a fine draw. There's, again, some options to take here, whether there's no way for me to sing with the Pete, unfortunately, to give myself more options to see what I draw with, because I really need to take out this Simba here, where my line, I'm only on 4 ink, of note. I've not been able to ink as flexible. You can certainly see where playing the happy out has actually come back and bit me a little bit. It has made the game texture change throughout, for sure.
Mhm.
On the early turns, it had a huge impact on how the game was played, and I think
Mhm.
how it was played made a lot of sense because of again, a lot of this game, from my perspective, was played with the context of that turn 3 inked Rapunzel, um, because I didn't have nearly an understanding of how poor your hand may have been in the early parts of the game because of how it's played out so far. But I think that's been in part thanks to the Daisy Duck giving you some inkable cards on the way there. But yes, this is, I think, the turn here. I'm fairly certain that Pete's going to challenge the Simba, and I've basically, that part's locked up. I don't need to think about that. The decision here is if I want to play Daisy and Calhoun, or if I want to use Storm on the Cinderella. I'm probably never beating the big Cinderella, even though you can just play it the following turn. But I do want to hedge a little bit against the card Hole in the World with my turn, um, by potentially drawing a card that's inkable, just to give myself more ink to fight afterwards, because I can certainly see from this position a whole world being actually a reasonable option, just because of the ink advantage you have to deploy bigger threats as well from here.
Yeah, to be fair, I when I looked at the whole new world in my hand, I was not planning to play that anytime soon.
Sure, sure.
I wanted to use my resources to deploy like challengers as quickly as possible.
Sure.
Giving you an entire new hand filled with like characters with lore felt a little dangerous, so
Oh, for sure.
I was feeling like I want to play that whole new world anytime soon.
Okay. Yeah, and it may have been a misassessment on my side in that one. And I drew a card that does cause me a little bit of pause. Um, I do kind of waffle on whether or not to actually play that one out. Strength of the bottom's the ideal situation for me
Mhm.
there. Daisy giveth and Daisy taketh. So um, the trade happens that I expect to happen. Here, I have the option to just play a Daisy out or ink Pluto and play Calhoun. Um, I think I end up inking, and I think that may be a decision I ultimately regret. Um, we are at this point relatively deep into the decks. I would say I've seen maybe 15 cards, 14 cards around there. And I've not seen a Doc or Rapunzel of my own. And I think I'm playing towards the potential of drawing those and maximizing how those can play out from this point onward, because I feel like I'm behind against your 4 cards in hand. Um, that's just where my head's at when on this ink turn, really.
Right. Um, like my idea would be, well, to play Daisy because you just want to rush towards as much lore as quickly as possible. Um, and I wouldn't be too worried about a whole new world.
Okay.
So I would likely keep Pluto Enhanced to play it on the next turn, and then the
Yeah.
turn after, Calhoun and something else is how I would plan it out.
Yeah. I ultimately go against that play, and again, my concerns may not have been correct. It does come down to a lot of how we both view certain parts of the matchup, and I was still playing a little afraid of the potential full new world where you weren't having that as a potential on your radar. So you can certainly see how different opinions on how the matchup should be played out or how certain tension points are being contested changes how people want to play the games out. And yeah, I likely made a misstep there in that sense.
I mean, it would be completely different if the lore totals were a little different,
I
but
think
with me at 0 and you at
I think if I
11,
had one more lore, I actually would have made the other play. Is how my math was on that.
sure.
I think if I was at 12, I actually would have just played the Daisy there. And yeah, I mean my guess with how your hand plays out here, you drew the small symbol. You have 6 inks, so you can't play both those. You have a few options here. I think you end up Zeusing first, right? Is that the case, or
No, I think I start with like let
playing
the
the storm? Okay.
storm rage on just to take out the daisy, kind of doing what I can, and um,
This was when I see you
yeah,
play the storm. I'm also pretty happy with how this is uh, going for me. I will say.
like it's basically um,
What's
well,
what's the
one
logic?
one
I guess behind
one
not.
option would have been to just play like the big Simba and then I guess sing Zeus.
Yeah, my
Um,
my inclination from here may have been seeing Zeus on the Calhoun and play the big Simba, leaving
yeah,
you with the storm and a Simba, which can then take out the Daisy the following turn. Um,
yeah, that may have been better. Um, oh yeah, and here I play Simba and then like in
yeah, you think about inking
like
instead.
like a similar sentence where say hold on,
Oh, I don't. Yeah, that's fine with me.
um, I want to play something. I want to just ink it and play Zeus, which pretty sure is better here. Um,
It protects the Robin Hood, so yeah.
kind of bad to do that
Oh,
on stream, but yeah, sorry
I'm.
about that.
I don't care about that at all. I would let the same thing happen in a DLC. I don't. I don't have, like. There's a whole debate of someone when you play a song, it resolves, then you choose targets kind of thing, where someone had a ward character in play and the other person didn't, and they played let it go, and like, well, you technically let it resolve, and then they have to hit their own thing. But yeah, I don't really subscribe to that type of thinking here. So
Yeah,
the
I'm generally if you because there's like no responses
there's no
in
information
this
to be
game.
gained. Yeah,
If within a couple seconds you say, yeah, I wanna like hold on, I wanna do something else, that's fine with me. If you yeah like want to take something back like a minute later, it's a bit too much.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah. Here, my game is still being played from the thought that you still have a Rapunzel because you've not had a single time to use it in hand, and this game. And I see there's 2 storms down, and there's a strength I know I put to the bottom, and a Zeus having been played. So you have 2 storms, 3 strengths, and 1 Zeus left in your deck to remove things. And I could, in theory, let the Stormy John your character, obviously to make it challengeable by Daisy and Happy. But if you then play a Rapunzel, I cannot possibly win the game from there. Um, so ultimately, I end up playing my own Daisy and storming it so that I give myself the chance to draw a Rapunzel. Um, it may look a little strange, but I'm just playing kind of to my outs in a lot of ways here. And I don't think that with 2 storms down, it's likely there's another one right here. I'm just trying
yeah,
to take some chances here. It may look strange to hit your own character instead of your opponents, but when you talk about Rapunzel and how quickly that game just turns around if that's drawn or played, yeah, it's rough. So
it makes a lot of sense. Um, one consideration though is that like if you had hit my Robin Hood with Let the Storm Rage On, it's likely that I start questing with it, and then if you do draw Rapunzel,
I can still hit
you
it. Yeah.
yeah can still hit it with Daisy and draw that way.
Yeah, that part of it too was the consideration.
But in general, I do like setting up yourself to draw like the best possible outs, and yeah, let Storm Rage On or like damage actions on your own characters is something that I think is still generally underused by many players.
Yeah, the thought with that, what you just mentioned there about me being able to challenge into it is then I then lose the Daisy, and at 11, um, I could
Yeah,
go to 14 from the two questing characters in play, and then the Rapunzel would be to 16, and then I don't need too much more from a draw two to get through the game. I think, and I really don't want to lose the Daisy. But you're absolutely right. I could hit your thing, hope you know the Rapunzel, and then later use Daisy to challenge. But um, I think I just didn't want to lose the Daisy. Uh, was my main concern.
and here, well, I'm thinking what to do. So I have Zeus, Whole New World, and Strength in hand,
Yep.
and like singing Whole New World could be appealing when I have like a bunch of ink,
Yeah.
but yeah, it can backfire so quickly when you just dump a bunch of lore on the board next turn that I have trouble contesting with, and I'm pretty far ahead in this game.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, well, if I can just take out your abilities to gain a lot of lore,
And
um,
cards. Yeah.
yeah, and then take out the Rapunzel option, then I'm in a better spot, and I am just not even going to play a whole new world
Mm-hmm.
because I'm ahead here on board. I have Zeus for whatever you play on the next turn. I'll start questing a bit, and yeah, I'm in no particular rush. I can play a whole new world maybe a few turns later when I can then like set up lethal for the turn after, but
Right.
no reason to give you a way back into the game unnecessarily.
Yeah, I do think that a scary number for me to be at is 6 ink and 14 lore, because that means I can play from hand uh, Pete, Piglet, and Lilo, or Daisy Duck, and that is 6 lore, which you can't challenge because it's upright. You can't sing songs into, and that's kind of a lockout. Usually in a Steel Song prior to this, uh, set, that was one of the things I like to just you checkmate your opponent with Steel Song in that way. Um, is to play Pete along with some upright characters in mirror matches, which is enough to close the game out. There's no way in the color pair to really get out of that. I do draw here. I think one of the best cards I could draw, which is Dwarven Mine. Um, Pairing with that happy that's been in play since turn two.
Mhm.
Finally, lets me take out this Simba pretty nicely here.
Yeah. Um, I'm wondering why I did. Oh, I couldn't play any songs previous to
Right.
that beat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I forgot for a minute that was what was going on. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, here I don't want to really quest into it and give you the ability to use a Rapunzel. I think could be there still. Again, I know I'm still playing around it, and there's a likelihood that last turn you would have used it to draw a single card. But knowing that I have no way to damage your Robin Hood for 5 damage, I don't have any Long Game Zeus in my deck, means I could still see you being a little bit more like if your hand is. I think at this point, from my perspective, I would guess that your hand is Rapunzel, Whole New World, Whole New World, and I think I said that was about what your hand could be. Obviously, a random storm draw off the top is similar to an uninkable song that you couldn't do anything with last turn. But yeah, the Zeus is a mystery one to me, and I figured there had to be at least one Whole New World at this point, right?
Yeah. I think if I had any character, even Rapunzel on the previous turn, I would have just
Yeah,
played it,
yeah,
used my ink. Yeah, I do remember you trying to do deduce my hand, and it being like 3 songs seems like the most likely thing.
yeah.
Um,
And you drew a fourth song even.
yeah. Well, at least now I could play it. Oh, you didn't quest
Yeah,
at all.
to the
It makes
Rapunzel
sense in the
credit.
face of Robin Hood. Mm,
I don't know that I would have wanted to because I feel like I could do the same thing next turn, potentially to a greater effect if I drew. Um, I basically didn't want to let one song clear my board in a sense that I could. Um, I guess I only have 5 ink. The thought process being I could use the mine to move a character to it and shoot itself and then heal with Rapunzel. Because it's not
mm.
only opponent's characters, but I was 1 ink short of that, so that might have been incorrect to do. But
So nice play.
the Robin Hood um, here, just checking the mine a little bit, mine putting me to 12 lore. Again, I'm still just hoping for a dock here. Calhoun is a card, but not a really good one here. Um, and now that you have enough to kind of take out the mine freely, I feel like I have to quest. Because now there's a kind of diverse options with more than one character of yours challenging. You can actually take out multiple things,
Mm.
so I feel like I have to quest at this point. And I can't challenge, of course, your character because it's got resist 2 for the turn. Um,
Actually, on the previous turn,
sure, yeah.
if you want to go back, like the turn you played the mine, you could have actually quested with both characters.
Mm-hmm.
Then sure, you will likely lose one to Robin Hood, which always feels bad, but it means that I'm not putting any points onto the mine, so that stays on
Mm-hmm.
board a bit longer perhaps. Um, it's like right now, since you're not questing, my Robin Hood was able to do, something
Right.
useful. Um, and I wasn't able to take out both characters. And generally in situations like those, intuitively I start questing because you cannot contest everything and you're getting at least somewhat close to 20.
Sure. Sure. One of the other things that me not questing here does, if you kill one of the characters, I can no longer draw strength to kill the Robin Hood if you decide to challenge into the mine or a storm.
Hmm.
Um, Giving those kind of both making them more live in my deck is another reason to I think hold back for this one turn because I get to keep the mine in play. But yeah, I definitely could see questing here. Again, I was still semi certain you had a Rapunzel. Obviously, you didn't. But I think that the
Yeah, that's what you were trying to play around. Yeah.
turn 3 forced ink play, I think I could have afforded to play around it since you kind of didn't tell me what your hand is, but I might maybe paid a bit too much respect to the Rapunzel after this turn of doing nothing. That yeah, you're probably right. You probably would have Rapunzel for 1 there. I probably should have picked up on that and not played around the Rapunzel, but I think the draw of Storm or Strength was still too appealing in my own deck to finish your Robin Hood off if you didn't do anything else with one of my 3 string
Mm.
characters in play. I needed to keep them both in play to make Strength alive too. But yeah, that's entirely possible to do that because um, any character from that point, especially a dwarf, would allow me to um, kill the Robin Hood immediately in that situation as well. Which that still holds true if I don't quest here. I think it just leaves me the songs as options to kill the Robin Hood. But yeah, it's definitely a close one. And I draw a Calhoun. Um, Play that here, and I think I have to just kind of quest to. I want to move the character I think is going to die most likely to it. There, locations with especially with Dwarven Mine, um,
Yep.
you should think of inversely as to some locations where you want characters at them. You want to put your worst ones at the mine if you can. Um, and the peat is going to be the hardest one to kill. Or is it? I think I should put the Smee there because it's going to be the easiest to kill because I'll have two health remaining. But yeah,
Yeah, that's me with its double lore pips is not going to survive the next turn for sure.
yeah. And if you want to put the Smee into the mine, Robin Hood challenging one of the characters, then I can potentially draw a Storm to kill the Smee at that point if I
Mm.
can't kill the Robin Hood because I'm kind of surrendering it to the Rapunzel potentially. I think you have Storm, great. Storm's always great.
Yep. And I
Thunderstorms.
draw another whole new world here.
Yep, that's perfect too.
With
See, now you have the 2 home I thought you had,
yeah, true. And I have no interest at all in playing them right now.
and there's the Rapunzel I thought you had. So that breaks the game. That Rapunzel for sure. It's been danced around since turn 3 from my side, but it finally shows up kind of on the turn where it's gonna actually be great.
Mhm.
But no, there's no coming back. I think from this situation, it'd have to be you drawing pretty horrendously off of these 3 or 4 cards you're going to draw into, and me drawing a dock immediately into like a dock, a daisy into another dock is the only way I could possibly win this game from this point. Um,
Yeah, pretty much.
but this was, I mean, the amount of back and forth and decisions and different opinions on how certain turns should be played. This is just kind of why this game is very complicated. I mean, this specific game is so complicated, but why it's a lot of fun to go through with you. And yeah, the Gantu showing up too. I mean, come on.
It made for a good finisher.
It's not a bad
It's
card.
also
It definitely has
it's
its.
also a captain for Smee.
You what?
It's also a captain for Smee.
There you go. Yeah. Are there any other captains in the deck?
The one piglet.
Oh, right. Piglet. Yeah. I think you were the first one to popularize Piglet as a mainstay in this archetype in Lille with your win there. It definitely uh, changed how I viewed the card and the match or the deck a little bit with how you need to assess certain parts of certain roles that the cards need to play. I think at the time I was on 2 different shift lines, being one of my primary focuses. Where now I think it's pretty common just to see the Smee Piglet package. And I drew a Leela, which would have been okay earlier in the game, but now not looking so great as a body in play still. And I don't have any other way to really go plus lore without it being in play for a turn. I choose to take out the Smee to prevent another Rapunzel potentially, and also gain 2 lore specifically, just to get a little bit closer. Maybe again, my whole game plan at this point is just drawing the dock into something, and I want to make sure that dock into a 2 lore character, potentially a Lawrence, is enough to win, which is why I have to challenge there, I think. And also it slows you down a bit because you
Yeah.
have a pretty quick clock coming. And yeah,
Yeah.
gone
You,
to.
you're almost at 20. What I was scared of here is you top decking Pete,
Yeah.
and then suddenly you have 3 lore on the board with um, yeah, with me not being able to contest it with songs.
Hmm. Yeah, I think I'd been through 2 Pete's at this point, but yeah, it's definitely a card that, um, again, is a way to ice the game. There's no interacting with Pete from Amber Steel. I think there's 2 cards in Amber Steel that actually do something, maybe 3. There's like a Steel Stitch from set 4 or 5 that deals 2 when you play it. And that's like the only way to kill a character in Amber Steel that actually gets through it. And there's like a giant 7-cost Steel Simba from set 4 that does the same thing, or set 3 maybe. Um, but yeah, here you quest to 10, and if you look
Yeah,
at the amount
it's
of stuff,
actually lethal next turn.
yeah, if you look at the amount of stuff you have in play, it's exactly 10 because I gone to.
Yep.
So gone to doing obviously the heavy lifting and winning the game by itself. No way for me to bring back Lilo.
So yeah, like because um, I do need to present lethal, otherwise you can top deck Doc into Daisy and potentially still clawback.
Yeah. I think I was out at that point because I couldn't do Doc. I guess
Yeah,
I could. I could do Doc into Storm, Daisy, and Storm hits an Inkable, and actually could have killed one of the Simbas, putting you 1 off lethal, and then had the Daisy and the Doc be lethal. Potentially, that's my only out at that point. Doc into Storm, Daisy, Inkable, and you having nothing. But yeah, that was an intense game. Really, again, that was a long game, and I really appreciate you. We've been chatting for about 2 hours now, so I really appreciate your time
yeah,
on all.
it was quite a while for the game to be played, but yeah, very frequently it kind of comes down to even the decisions you make while mulliganing, or like what to
Always.
ink sequence on turn 1 or turn 2, because yeah, it's not always clear how it's going to develop, but
Yep.
those sorts of decisions can easily make or break the game. And yeah,
Yep.
it's very interesting to talk about our thought processes, what goes into that. And I do believe that even the best Lorcana players at the moment, like still have a lot to learn, make many plays that are ultimately not the best ones,
Yeah.
and the strategic depth in the game does indeed go quite deep, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's incredibly complex, and it's really why we play the games. When people, there is the whole debate of best of two and best of three, reducing variance in people, getting decisive wins and things like that. But ultimately, I do think a lot of times people who make less mistakes or are much well versed in certain situations and how to navigate them will win most of the games being played. You will do make a ton of judgment calls in the game. I mean, every other turn is a judgment call. What do you give up to ink? What do you give up to play? What do you challenge with? Do you challenge? Do you quest? Do you lure? All these things, what certain things represent, and how to play around them is a big part of all the skill of the game, and it's tons of fun. And I want to say thank you again. I'm gonna wrap this video up here for joining me. Long time, really appreciate it. Anything you want to say in closing, or where can people find you social media wise? Probably all across the board, but
Easiest way to find me would be on Twitter /X. Username is @Karsten_Frank. I write on a monthly basis for the TCG player website, some strategy on Lorcana, and apart from that, this was a pleasure. Thank you for having me, Brennan, and
yeah,
well, good match. Best of luck in the future rounds.
yeah. To you too, and Continental's come up in just 2 weeks, so good luck there too.